Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome to Sunday School. I hope you're doing well. I hope your mom and dad are taking good care of you and you're taking good care of them. What is your favorite colors? Could it be purple, orange, yellows, blues, or how about this red? Don't you like this red? Red's my favorite color. In today's lesson, the very first book of the Bible, Genesis chapter 37, verses 3 and 4, Joseph, we're going to talk about that his father Jacob had given him a very brilliant special coat. And his brothers, Joseph had 12 other brothers that didn't like Joseph to begin with because their father Jacob showed favoritism towards Joseph. Have you ever had favoritism towards you? Well, when Joseph got that brilliant bright coat, his brothers became more angrier, and in fact they despised Joseph, and they even hated Joseph. So one day when his brothers were working in the fields, they could see Joseph coming towards them. So his other brothers decided to make up a plan to say, hey, he's a dreamer and he's dad's favorite. So let's just take a story and say that a wild animal had killed Joseph, and we'll see where he goes from there. Well, soon enough, they got close, and his brothers ripped off that brilliant coat of his, threw him in a dry well. Well, could you imagine throwing your brothers and sister into a well? I couldn't even imagine that. Well, soon after that, they saw some Ishmaelites that were traveling from Canaan over into Egypt, and they were traders. They had spices and gum and different types of ointments. They were going into Egypt, and they decided to sell Joseph for 20 pieces of silver. So meanwhile, Joseph's brothers went back to Jacob and told their story that a wild animal had attacked Joseph, ripped off that coat, and that's all that's left of him. And Jacob was so sorrowful and so sad to know that he would never see his son again. How on earth could a wild animal just destroy his son? Well, meanwhile, Joseph was sold over into Egypt from the Ishmaelites to Potiphar, which is the officer of King Pharaoh who ruled the entire Egypt. So meanwhile, Joseph was doing jobs for Potiphar and knew that everything was going well in his land, and everything was so good that the only thing that Potiphar had to worry about was what kind of food he would eat, because Joseph was taking good care of things. Well, they knew that Joseph was able to interpret dreams, and some of these people had these dreams. In fact, the king had this dream about how one day he dreamed that a skinny cow ate a big cow and didn't quite know what that transpired. So they brought somebody else in to try to interpret the king's dreams, and the king just got frustrated. So one day they said, well, why don't you bring in Joseph? So Joseph heard the dream and told the king that in that dream that his about a small cow eating a big cow, that for 7 years you could get all the crops and all the food that you can gather up. But then in another 7 years after that, there would be hardship, which would be you couldn't get anything for 7 years and would be very, very difficult. So the first 7 years, they gathered all the grains that they could, and Joseph at the time was putting all this grains and all this food into the barns because they knew that the famine was going to be coming. So once the first 7 years had ended, then the 7 years famine was coming on, and Joseph's brothers and his father was still living in Canaan. And so his brothers went to Egypt and wanted to get some grain. Well, at the time, Joseph had all grown up and noticed his brothers, but his brothers did not notice him because Joseph was in charge of all that. he said, so I'm going to test my brothers and see if my father and my younger brother Benjamin is still living. So they kept a few brothers back into Egypt while they went back and told their father. Well, it was true. God is so good that even through all the jealousy and hatred and favoritism that they thought Joseph had with his father, they brought Jacob and Benjamin back into Egypt. And that Joseph actually saved his brother's life, not only his brother, but his father's life. Because God is so good, he can take hatred and jealousy and even a bright, brilliant coat such as this one, but it would even be brighter in Joseph's age, that God is in control. I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. And I hope you have a great day and a great week. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.